Alef Dechal Moed Pesach Tovshin Pehei. Bruchem Abom B'Shem Hashem. Igen Shetes Gres Kolm Kapelum and the ganze Choshev Oilam. The Mordige Kiddush Hashem that we see all over the world. Yidden coming, hundreds and the thousands coming to Igen Shetorah. Is the Borough Park, Williamsburg, Muncie, Lakewood, all over Israel, over 11, 12 places. Thousands of Yidden are coming to learn in Shetorah every Dechal Moed. The big Ma'amad Kiddush Hashem, and thousands of people here. The Shurim all over the world. Then we have Yeshivas Chalamoid for thousands of children in many shuls in America and Israel. Whoever wants to have a chelik and sponsoring one of these shurim, please come up to one of the Askarim of English Torah or call us at 718-851-8651. Today's big Ma'amad Kiddush Hashem is always Nidvas Yididenu Rabbi Avram Spry from AV Plumbing, who is sponsoring today's Ma'amad Kiddush Hashem, the Chavod Rabbi Smith Shlita. Today we have, as we said, Rabbi Rakov Zev Smith, who speaks every Sunday in Halacha, but Chalamoid, he gives us a special treat. His oiris on the topic Raisi v'gam Zeknati v'lo Raisi mוותר mafsid. Harav Agon Rabbi Smith Shlita.
Mor tells us in Tainus of Chofei, it was a terrible drought, there was no rain, and the great Rabbi Eliezer davened 24 tefillos, brachos, and it wasn't answered. Then his Talmud, Rabbi Kiva, said one tefillah, Avinu Malkeinu, and Miyad Nena, and there was rain. So people started talking. Something's wrong. The Rebbe is not as big as the Talmud. One Avinu Malkeinu. So Yotze Baskel, v'Amalai b'nei shezeh godel mizeh, el shezeh ma'avel midoisav, B'kiva's ma'avel midoisav, v'zeh, and Rabbi Eliezer is not ma'avel midoisav. Ma'avel midoisav is a form of mavata. He gives in, he lets the other one go. But the kliya is, Rabbi Eliezer was his Rebbe, he was zicha bigger than him in learning. So because he had the midah of ma'avel midoisav, his tefillah was answered so quickly. But there's more to the kasha, because the In Yaakov points out that not only his tefillah was bigger than his Rebbe's tefillah, but his learning. Because halacha, when you have a machlokes, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Kiva, we passing it like Rabbi Kiva, the Talmud. So the midah of ma'avel midoisav is not only great in tefillah, but in Torah. And then he adds that's why Lamaisa we see that Rabbi Kiva lived 120 years like Moshe Rabbeinu and like Hillel. So obviously there's so much more to ma'avel midoisav than just the feinkite, the one that's giving in. It affects the Torah, it affects the tefillah. But I want to have another kasha. It was a Yankel came from Eretz Yisrael. He moved with a big family. He had no panos in Eretz Yisrael, and he had to feed his family. He had no money, so he went to a friend of his, an old friend who had a big grocery, and says, "Would you mind if I shop by you on credit? I hope I'll make money. I'll pay it back. But right now I have no foreseeable plan. But it might take a few weeks. I'll find a job. Trust me." So the fellow says, "Sure, that's what friends are for." It went on for 2 years that he shopped for his big family, and then it didn't pay a penny. Kamat didn't have a job, a little job, he had to pay his rent. But kids, he owed close to $20,000 already. And he couldn't face his friend. One day, he bumped into his friend right by the store. And he started crying. He said, I don't know what to tell you. I can't meet you. I can't greet you. I don't know what to do. So the storekeeper says, "Come with me. I'm going to talk to you a second." Takes him into his office. He says, "Let me tell you what happened just this morning. Someone came to me and says, 'Do you know so-and-so, Yankel?' He goes, 'Yeah.' 'Does he shop in your store?' 'Yeah.' 'Does he have a bill?' He goes, 'Well, it's not your business. Well, I can't tell you. It's a private business.' He goes, 'I want to pay the entire bill.' This Yankel sits and learns with such a smother. I'm so inspired. I want to be this Vulin." And then the storekeeper says, "Come over, I want to show you something." And he puts on the computer, and he puts on his name, and says, "This is you? Your address? Yeah? You know how much you owe me?" And he presses balance, and the big letter is balance 0. Imagine what Yankel feels at this moment. 2 years of Admas Nefesh, balance 0. I don't know if the story happened, I made it up. But it's a Gemara, boys say. The Gemara says, in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, Daf Yud Zayin, Kol ha'maval midoisav, marviyin al kol pshov. And Rabbi Yapian used to teach, it doesn't say if the Chavetz Chaim is Ma'aval Midaisav, so the Moichel, the few Averis he has. Kol HaMa'aval Midaisav, Ma'avirin Al Kolpshav. A person can have a Pekel Averis, and if he's Ma'aval Midaisav, the Baruch will show him, look, balance 0. But Hagufa Kasha. Mara says in Bava Kama, Oim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Vatrin, Yevatru Chayav. How does this work? But it's more than that, because the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, the next Gemara tells a story. Rav Huna was deathly ill; he was dying, and Rav Papa, the Baal Ruach HaKodesh, came to visit him, and he saw Taka, his moments are limited. So he started preparing for the Levaya, and then suddenly Rav Huna recovered. Understandably, so Rav Papa was embarrassed to meet his friend. He prepared his Levaya. So his friend said, Rav Huna said, don't worry, you were right. Really, his time had come. But Lamaisa, Ama Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Baruch Shalom said, Hoyav le'mukim b'milei, le'sekuma b'hadei, and Zok Rashi, Ein oimed b'midoisav. So not just balance 0. The Rebbeinu Shalom Kavayachal himself says, if you're Ma'aval Midoisav, I'm going to give you extra years. What's that? I recall it was 5+ years ago. I remember like yesterday. It was right before Pesach. It was COVID, Tafshin Pei, and COVID was wreaking havoc in Klal Yisrael. People were being nifter, Rahman al-San, many a day. No one knew what to do. Not medically, not ruchnius. And Pasha, it was a chayshech v'afela. Pasha didn't know what to do. And Reb Chaim Kanievsky wrote a letter, which I cherish, and he said the Eitzah. Now Reb Chaim had Kol Torah Kula on his fingertips. He felt nicht leis by him schoolis. But he said, you want a schooler for gesund to make it through? He pointed to the Gemara in the end of Hayrius, where Rabbi Yosef was officially appointed to be the Rosh Hashiva. But since Rabbah was there, he didn't want to replace Rabbah. Rabbah will feel bad. So he said for 22 years, he stepped to the side. He wouldn't take the position until it came the right time. Zok the Taisis of Rosh Hashanah, again, the end of Hayrius, that for 22 years in Rabbi Yosef's house, no one got sick. Not even a kleinikite. And don't forget, there was a Canaan in his house, there were young babies in the house, and children get sick. For 22 years there was a nes nifla that no one got sick. So Reb Chaim, in the few words that he needed, said, you want to stay healthy? Ma'aval midoisav. You have to mavater. And what's shot? There was a big gevir who had a ben yachid, and his only source of nachas was his ben yachid, and he decided to splurge, do something exceptional. He's going to build for his ben yachid not just a nice house, a city, beautiful city, and get the state of the art of everything. He's going to pour in millions of dollars just to make the son happy. And everything was updated, the newest, the best, the most efficient. And that was the problem, because after he built this big city, there was a big security and alarms. Something that went wrong and it wasn't working. They tried to open it, they couldn't open it. And every day goes by and the Gevir is plotting. I put so much money to honor my son, and he can't enjoy it. They couldn't get in. You can't break down a big wall like they made. The house was not opened. They couldn't open the house. And he's plotting. He's seeing all his koich is going down the drain. Until one day someone said, let me try. And he spent hours and he figured it out. He opened the door. Imagine what the Gevir would give that person. I have one ratzon to mahana my son. I poured in all my koiches and it didn't work. And you made it work. Again, I could say, I don't know if this story happened. I made it up. But this is the story of the Ma'aval Midoisav, Rabbi. Say, listen good. We know the Rebbeinu Shalom created this world for one and only one reason. Ramchal quotes in Mekubalim, Rotzo hakel baruch hu liyos meitiv hatova shleima. The Rebbeinu Shalom made this world for one reason, and only one reason. To be meitiv to his heilige kinder. But let me tell you something. Anybody with experience knows it can't work. It won't work and it can't work. This world can't make everybody happy. Because I have my agenda, I have what I want to accomplish, but I'm not living alone. There's hundreds of people in my yeshiva, with my type of work, with my stela, and at every stage of life, I want something, and there are tens or maybe hundreds of people with the same agenda. So how could it work? If a person's going to spend his life living the misery of what Shimon Shkop in Agdama to Shari Yosha writes, he taicha the Mishnah, Kishani la'atzmi mo'ani. If that's your purpose in life, to feed the me, mo'ani. That's called das heis gelebt. Because everybody in his world is a competition, is a threat to his happiness. A bacha wants to be the best in the shiva, wonderful. But there are other bachim there. It can't work. You want this, you want the best chavrusa, you want to be close to Rashi, whatever it is, in every stage of life, there's always the competition. And then you're living with hundreds of competitions. Baruch Hashem, the Torah world today is blossoming, is bursting at its seams, getting into yeshivas, getting children into yeshivas, getting a stela, buying a house. V'uma gate and v'uma state, it's a question of mi b'roish. People are different. Chazal tell us no one thinks alike, just like no one looks alike. They say if you ask two Yidden opinions, you get 3 opinions. So how does it stem? How does it work? And the only way that this world will make people happy is if people are living with the Heilige Geveret of Chaim Volozhina. Ki zeh kol adam lo la'atzmai nivra. Rak l'hoya lachina b'chol asher yimtze b'koychei la'asos. Because then every other person is not a threat to my happiness, it's an opportunity of my happiness. If I give in, if I'm the gibor and I give in, I'm the ma'aval midoisav. Of course I want it. But the Baruch Shalom wants the world to work, and it won't work if everybody is fighting for their own rights. Mar says in Psachim Kufid Gimel Shloishim Chayim Einam Chayim, and one of them is the Raschonim. What's the Raschon? It doesn't go his way, and he can't be soivel it. So instead of the golden 11 that the Baruch Shalom wanted for us, it's a stempel of Chayim Einam Chayim. You think about marriage, the biggest bracha. I don't have to tell you. Noshim am b'fnei atzmam has so many meanings. It's the Baruch Shalom. I don't know why, but men and women are so different. Men are always hot, women are always cold. Men are usually more punctual than women. I don't want to go on and on and on. But noshim am b'fnei atzmam, and every day, half of Clarissa makes the bracha she'asani kirtzaynai. Why? Because the Baruch Shalom wanted that we should be mavata. Instead of a house that's a basis shel satan, you wonder what that means? I'll tell you. The Gemara says in Gittin Daf Nun Beis that there were 2 neighbors that every Erev Shabbos they fought. And Rameir heard about it. He says this can't go on. And he spent 3 Erev Shabbos in that vicinity, and they didn't fight for 3 Shabbos. So they heard the satan leaving the house, and this is Lashon Gemara. Vei dafku Rameir ha'gavra mi beisei. That means a house that is machloikis is a basis shel satan. Instead of a bayis of the shechina of ish v'ishtei shruya with shalom, it's a basis shel satan. A migdash ma'at or a basis shel satan. But it can't work. It absolutely can't work unless someone's mavata. The next stage in life, a simcha, a baby's born, a wonderful simcha. But these eyes, and probably your eyes, also saw over the years the birth of a child is the beginning of a long machlekes. Who's going to get the name? Who's going to be the sandik? Where's the bris going to be? Who's the kvata? Doesn't need much. Neighbors. The Chacham in Koladim writes in Mishlei, Toiv shachin karov mi achrachuk. There's a certain close that you could have with the shachin. Chazal tell us in 2 places in Shas, Oyev es hashcheinav. A shachin is like Kamara Karev. But anybody knows what's doing in the Chayshim Mishpat world? The machlekes, about 1 inch, about extending, about zoning, about mastering, then it goes from bad to worse because he's fighting for his rights, and that's the American mentality. You know, I once saw someone wearing a t-shirt, I love me. It's bad enough but people are proud of it. And the truth that you think about it, that's the American mentality. Fight for your rights. I'm going to sue. Heipach Torah. Heipach das Torah. But can the world work if everybody's fighting for their rights? It's inevitable. You're living mamish close to one another. There's going to be differences. And that's really why, by the Baruch Shalom, it's so precious. Because the Baruch Shalom made this world that we should be happy, but it can't work unless we are living for Yenim. Loy la'atzmai nivra. Instead of kshani la'atzmi mani, he's living loy la'atzmai nivra. And that's the golden amida of a mavata, and it's noteworthy. There's no, to my knowledge, there's no English word for the word mavata. I mean, there are many other words you could use: yield, forego, defer, step back, step down, overlook, forgive. But the word mavata can't be replicated, because that's a Yiddish word. That's a person that's living with v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha. And mavata is just one word. It means Ratzon Hashem. It means the Rebbe Shalom saying, if you're mavata, it's going to be balanced 0 to you. If you're mavata, it could be arichas yomim for you. If you're mavata, you could have 22 years of not a sick person in your family. That's the difference. And that's why it's one word that has so much. Amir tamachzik es hamiruba. It can't be unless people are being mavata. And then every person is not a threat to my happiness, it's an opportunity to enhance my happiness, because the greatest simcha, the greatest strength is a mavata. I saw this story in 2 reliable svarim. It was Erev Shabbos, Shkolim, the Satmar Rav's house, and there was a big Shabbos planned because they had to raise money for the Moisdis. Out of that week, the Rebbe wasn't feeling well, but he decided to make a big Shabbos, and he's together with the Rosh HaKol. And he noticed that the Rebbe prepared the Neiros, Shabbos Neiros, in the house. Now, the minig was that when the Rebbe fetish, she lit in the Beis Medrash, the Makam Achila. When he was not feeling well, she lit in the house. But this week he had a big Shabbos. So he told the Rebbe, said, no, we're having a big Shabbos this week, I have to have a tish. No, I'm not letting. The Rebbe wasn't feeling well, no tish this Shabbos. The Rosh HaKol almost fainted. Big Shabbos plan. The Rebbe was not happy. He goes, yeah, but I have to make it. We made a big Shabbos and we're planning. We have to do something. He goes, I'm not letting. And the Rebbe looks at the Rosh HaKol, and whether he tvis the machshava, you didn't need it for that, he was thinking, this is the most powerful person in the world being pushed around by his Rebbetzin. So the Rebbe says, okay, no tish. And looks at the Rosh HaKol and says, you think she won? You think she's strong? I won, and I'm strong. Because I was mavata. Isn't that true? Isn't that the greatest simcha when a person is bigger than himself and is mavata? The Rambam writes in a letter, after he writes about the Gnusa Machloikis, Hisparu B'Sevel, be proud of being a sovereign, of being mavata. Ki ha'gevura ha'yeshara. That's the greatest strength. And we live in a world with anti-Torah hashkafas, which is bad enough. But when something is so wrong, it really bothers me. You know, the Goy Yeshua says, don't be a pushover. Don't be a nobody. Stand up for your rights. That's so wrong. A person that's willing to give in his own, he's the biggest gibor. He's not a pushover. He's not a nobody. That's the Gvura HaYeshara. That's the greatest strength. And who like Bari Olam knows the bracha of Hini Matoivam Anoyim Shevasachem Gam Yochad? Who like Bari Olam knows the bracha of Leimotza HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kli El HaMachzik Bracha El HaSholem? And that's why there's such a great schar for Mavata. Because otherwise, no relationship will last. There's a beautiful medrash in Kehelas, Perek Zayin, Hois Yud Gimel. When the Baruch Shalom created Gan Eden, Kaviyachol, he gave Adam Rishon a guided tour, literally. He showed him all the trees, Iloni Gan Eden, V'amalei Re'ei Ma'isai. Look what I created just for you. Kamenoyim u'meshubachim heim. I made for you a Gan Eden. V'chol ma shebarasi b'shvilcha barasi. Tein daitcha shalei tiskalkel v'sachav esaylami. She'im tikalkel ein mi she'yasaken acharecha. Because if you don't live properly, no one could correct that. And in my mind's eye, I see the Baruch Hashem talking to every person. I put you in a Gan Eden. I put you, Adam b'yikar, I put you in Olam Hazeh. Whether you're in yeshiva, whether you're a working person, or married, or children, or grandchildren. And the Baruch Hashem begs us, Tein daitcha shalei sekalkel b'sacher v'saylomi. If you're going to fight for your rights, you'll never be happy. If you're not going to be mavati, you're never going to be happy. Because it can't work. Ein mi she'yasaken acharecha. And that, I think, is why there's such a great schar for a mavata. He's making the Baruch Hashem's world really work and really be besimcha. Rabbi Yoina writes in Shari Tshuva in Aleph Chav Ches when he speaks about Maval Midoisav, and he uses a very exquisite lashon. There's a Pesach Tikva Nichbod Ma'oid, a very honorable way to adore, a protectia, if you want to use that word. A Pesach Tikva, it's a door of hope, a very honorable door of hope. Instead of the misery of Anila Atzmi Mo'ani, he's doing what the Baruch Hashem really wants. And the truth is, I think it's Dvar Pshutim. We live in a world that's so busy with the American Constitution, the pursuit of happiness. And people are more, they were more menschlich, they were restrained, they live like mensch. But today it's a world gone insane. So you think if the people are mamish, busy day and night doing what they want, feeding the me, they would be happy? Mental health professionals say this is a booming business. There's never a time like suicide and depression like this today. People are finally doing what they want and giving themselves happiness. They should be the happiest people in the world. But it's not a kasha. Because akina hatayv v'akovid might see in a sadam in oilam. Mendel Kaplan, the legendary Philadelphia Mashiva, came from learning by Bechana, came to America, and he heard that America is not So he came and he saw what's doing in America. So he said, I have a nechama. One thing I see American people are very, very, very busy with. The first word of the Aseres HaDibros, anoichi. Oh, they're wonderful. And when a person's busy with the anoichi, there's going to be depression, and there's going to be suicide, because it doesn't work, it can't work. You can't live with other people and want the anoichi to always have precedence. It can't work. Because everybody's a threat, a competition. But then you have a mavata, everybody's an opportunity of my balance zero. And that's my gvura yeshara. But it's more than that. The mavata is not just in this case, in this story. Now, Bitzala in the Koich Vayar in Simon Lamed Hey, yes, an obvious kasha. Kol ha'maval midoisav is a loshen rabim. It should say a maval midosai. If you have a problem with a neighbor, so it's a choishe mishpat. You maval on the choishe mishpat. He says, no, it's not true. Because a mavata has a transformative effect. When someone is living a mavata, today it's choishe mishpat, and tomorrow it's in shalom bayis, and the day after it's the gabbai didn't give him the aliyah that he wanted, because he changed his attitude. It's not me baroish, it's yenim. That's why the mavata is getting schar in this world, because it changes the whole personality, it changes the whole attitude. The Mishnah says in Avos Perek Beis Mishnah Tes, Leif Toiv, the Gavaldige Mida. What does Leif Toiv mean? But it's more than that. Eize derech yishara sheyidda ba'adam. So you have a few different pshatim. What's the derech yishara? Rabbi Lezer Baruch says Leif Toiv, and the Mishnah concludes that's the best of all midas. What is a Leif Toiv? Why is it the best of all midas? Zokt Rabbeinu Yoina on that Mishnah Avos, a Leif Toiv is a savlan. When things don't go his way, Yizbalehu ve'ein mar befiu ki chiku mamtakim ve'kulei machmadim. You can't touch those words. Those are the heilige Werte of Shlomo Melech. But chiku mamtakim ve'kulei machmadim. He's just such a zisa person. He's such a pleasant person. He's so easy to get along with, whether it's a spouse or a neighbor or a rav or a mispalel or a worker or a co-worker, but someone that's a pleasant person. He understands that he has to be mevata to make any relationship work, and that's why it's such a challenge, because a person by nature is always worried about the anaychi. I once aware of a certain machlokes. I was going from bad to worse. And I went up to someone who I knew. I said, listen, you listen to me, be mavata. I don't get into, it's not important who's right. Even if you're right, let him be mavata, be mavata. So he shot back at me, why should I be mavata? Let him be mavata. If I know makshin oil in the same kasha, whenever you have a machlokes, why should I be mavata? Let him be mavata. I told him, I'll tell you. One of the biggest, probably the biggest vitur in history was Rachel Imeinu. She's supposed to marry Yaakov Avinu, Ma'im Shiftikah, and she gave it up to Leah. So it always bothered me, what was Rachel's het to do that? You want mivata on money? Fine. Covered? Fine, no problem. But the mivata on nitzchias, on netzach nitzachim, on Shiftikah? She made a change. Maybe she can marry Esav. But she gave everything up. Who said she was right? How did she have the courage to do that? You know what the answer is? I believe Rachel Imeinu had amunah in the words of the Medrash before it was given. But the Medrash in Dvarim Dalet Hey, Omar Kodesh Baruch Hu Shimuli She'ein Adam She'meya Li Umafsid. You never ever lose if you listen to the Rebbeinu Shloim. It's not shaykh, it can't happen that a person will lose when he does the Ratzon Hashem. Now avada, we have to give up for Yiddishkeit. Mesiras Nefesh is the secret of Klal Yisrael survival. Giving up is fine. But don't think you'll lose by doing the right thing. What's bashert yours will be yours. No one loses by doing the right thing. And I was thinking, if that's true by Stam Ratzon Hashem, how much more so Alachas Kama V'Chama when someone's a Mavata? Where Bari Olam promises what we don't find by any other midah. Balance zero, Mavina Kopshov, Arichas Yomim, health. Rachel did not have an inkling how it's going to work out, I believe. But she knew, Ein Adam Shemei Li Umafsid. And you know something? She was right. Because a few hundred years later, this is the Medrash, the famous Medrash in Eicha Psichach of Dal, Rashi and Yirmiyah, in Lamed Aleph Yidal quotes it briefly. When Yidden did a terrible chet and the Beis Mikdash was destroyed, the Bereshit wanted to destroy Klal Yisrael. That was the end of them. The others, Moshe Rabbeinu, we learned the Medrash Barichas, came and wanted to save Klal Yisrael to no avail. The Bereshit would not accept that tefillah until Rachel Imeinu came and said, Rebbeinu Shloim, I was mavata. Why can you be mavata? And I was thinking, had she married Yaakov on a regular basis, she would have Shiftikah, but it wouldn't have lasted. That would be the end of Klal Yisrael. Because she was mavata, she saved Klal Yisrael. Rachel was right. Ein Adam Shemei Li Umafsid. But it's more than that. Because the Landil will say, what was the heter to give up Ruchnias? That's one kasha. But what about Chayecha Koidman? Chayecha Koidman and Ruchnias? The teretz, that's part of Chayecha Koidman. Because when a person feels that he has to be Mavata, that's Chayecha Koidman. And that's exactly what happened. She was saved because of her Vita, and Klal Yisrael was saved because of her Vita. The Bereshit bleibt nicht schuldig. That's by every Ratzon Hashem. But when someone's Mavata, when everything in him is saying, why should I be Mavata? Let him say, because I'm a better investor than the other person. I'm smarter than the other person. In if you're allowed to say this, there's a soft spot in the Rebbeinu Shalom's heart, Kaviyachon. There's a pasuk that says, Kemat that Lashon. But there's a soft spot, it's called a Mavata. That opens all doors. It's a superpower. That saved Klal Yisrael what the Avos and Moshe could not do. I mean, that alone is mystifying. Of Steinman, Zechariah Levracha, in his last few years, probably we still remember it. He went on a campaign, and he said, Beferish, he's campaigning about the godless of Mavata. Because people come to him with tzaras and machloikis. He says the root of it all is when a person is fighting for his own rights. If people would mavata, there'd be more shalom bayis, there would be less chosh mishpat issues, less machloikis in shuls, in moistis. And he would often say this lashon: Nar hayisi v'gam zaqanti v'lo yisi mavata mafsid. So I once mentioned this a number of years ago. So someone was kind enough, I never met him, I thank him if he's listening, and he sent me around 20 pictures of Rav Steinman when he looked ancient. He must have been over 100 years old at the time. You could see he looked old, and at the bottom he wrote those words, Nar ha'yisi v'gam zaqanti v'lo yisi mavata mafsid. I would give you the picture, but I don't have it anymore, I gave it out. But kasam el luach libecha, emblaze it on your heart. Nar hayisi v'gam zaqanti, whether it's chosh mishpat or shalom bayis or mechutanim or simchis or names or kvata or sadak dushin or samdiks and everything. V'lo yisi mavata mafsid. Oh, that's your chayecha koidmin. There's a story that's close to my heart because I remember when it happened. Didn't happen that long ago. There was a boy whose bar mitzvah was Parshas Yisroi. And the father was a very scheduled person, a very organized person, and he went to the Gabbai months in advance, write down on the calendar, my son wants to learn Parshas Yisroi. Gabbai says, no problem. You know, when people say no problem, showing a problem, he totally forgot about it. A few weeks later, another father came to the Gabbai, my son wants to learn Parshas Yisroi, could you write it down on the calendar? So now it's ready more, Samach Venera, so he wrote it down. The invitations went out, and it's going on a Bahala. Two people can't lane Parshas Yisroi. So the Gabbai called both fathers, listen, I'm guilty, 100% guilty, but what are we going to do now? So he said, the first father you have right, I promise you first, but you work it out, tell me whatever you want, I'm going to go along with it. So the first father says, I know my son, he's a gutta, he'll be mavata. If he can lane Parshas Mishpatim, he'll lane Parshas Mishpatim. The Gabbai looks it up, fine. And the child was mavata on his bar mitzvah, which he had prepared already, months in advance, Parshas Mishpatim. Okay. End of the story, l'chayra. 4 years later, Rabbi Yashiv had a terrible heart defect, and they said they gave him a few weeks to live. To make a surgery was too dangerous, but there was one doctor in America, and again, most of us still remember the story, who was willing to make the surgery. So a number of Gedolei Yisrael went to the doctor, asked him to come, they made arrangements, and he flew to Eretz Yisrael, and he made a miraculous surgery beside the Shmaya, and Rabbi Yashiv lived many years afterwards. He was in the hospital recovering Parshas Mishpatim. And the family knew if they put out a cruise, they need $1 million for Rabbi Yashiv, you'll have 500,000 people. So they didn't want that. So they decided whoever they have in the hospital, they're going to make $1 million. They have to find a Balkaira. But they'll try. They went from room to room. There was a young boy who by then was 17 years old, and said, do you lane Parshas Mishpatim? Could you lane? He goes, yeah, it's my bar mitzvah parsha. I mean, not really, whatever. I'll lane Mishpatim. And he laned. Rabbi Yashiv was very ill at the time, but he saw a young child laning, a young boy laning. He asked one of the boys, like, why is he here? So it seems his mother had a machal they couldn't diagnose, and she was mama's dying. She was deteriorating by the day. There was nothing to do. They know what to do. So Rabbi Yashiv, his grace of heart, he said, I have a big professor, they call professor, a doctor, by me. He's here, still here. Maybe I'll ask my professor to go to the woman and look and make an examination. And kachavi, and he figured out the problem. And she recovered. Vahila Moifis, I still remember when it happened. So they ran to Michal Yehuda, and just printed in a sefer. They told him the Moifis. It was not a Moifis. It's a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. This boy was Mavata, and the Baruch Hashem gave his mother a new lease on life. Ein adam shemei liyu mafsid. The Bernstein bleibt nicht schuldig. It's balance zero. Not a moifus. When someone has that attitude, it's the greatest pleasure to be mevater. Bezeh ubavah. Not only if you're in a Welt, in this Welt, Lari'isi mevater mafsid. More Psachim, Shloisha, Kufid Gimel, Shloisha Kadosh Baruch Hu Oyavon. Now, right away, a Yid with a trouble year of Shemaim wakes up. Oh, the Baruch loves me. Well, what do you have to do? But look at the three things the Gemara says. Misha ein koyis, Misha ein mishtaker, Misha ein maimed al midoisav. Two of the three people that the Baruch has a special ahava is a mavata. He doesn't get angry. He's a chikum amtakim v'chulim machmadim. He's not maimed al midoisav. People apply him. There's a soft spot in Bari Olam's heart for a mavata. It just Kadosh Baruch Hu oyavon. Bel Yoman, sein Gesund, the Gabi of Reb Chaim Kanievsky, had hundreds of stories that he saw with his own eyes, but he says this story stands out. Chaim was once at home, and there was a dinner brought to his house. Now, he didn't pass in the entire, but they said you could pass whatever the makabel the psak. There was a young couple engaged to be married, a chassan and kala, married in a few weeks from then, and they had a problem. It seems mamish like 2 weeks to the chasana, and the bacha nebach, the chassan, was diagnosed with yanamachla. So the doctor says there's good hope, prognosis is good, but you have to go through very aggressive treatment right after the chasana, close to a year of treatment, radiation, chemotherapy, but they hope it's going to work, but you can't delay it. So the chassan said, I want to break the shidduch. I can't schlep a girl into a kala into Shana B'Shayin in the hospital. And the girl says, I will dare not break the shidduch. I got engaged to marry a ben Torah, and because there's a problem, I'm running away. And she was saying, I want to make this, get married. And he said he wants to break the shidduch, and there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. This is Yidden fighting. This is the Baruch of Nachas. So Chaim, as soon as he heard it, says, make the chasana, I'll come to the chasana, don't worry. And they left, and Rabbi Yo says, I'm Dana Rabbeinu, I'm not questioning you, but what's it based on? He said, it's a medrash in Parshas Noach. Lamed Gimel Aleph, the medrash says that Alexander the Great, traveled the world, as we know in history, and he came to one of the Horei Choyshech, he met Melech Katzia, and he wanted to see their judicial system, how they deal with problems, financial problems. So he's watching from the side, and there was a case. Next, someone sold a kilkus, a garbage dump, to Moicha sold to Lekeach. Lekeach bought it and was digging probably to work in it. And he found a treasure. So he comes running to Moicha, I bought a dump, I didn't buy a treasure. The Moicha says, what do you mean? I sold it as is. If it had a treasure, it's yours. Alexander, the self-centered person, he couldn't believe it. He's saying, well, these people are crazy. So he said, let me hear what they have to say. So the judge says, Moicha, you have a child of eligible age, of marriageable age? Yeah, a boy. Oh, good. Lekech, you have a child of eligible age? Yeah, I have a girl. Okay, we'll make a shidduch. We'll give the treasure to them. So the end of the story is Alexander Mukta says, if this would be in my country, I would kill them both and take the money. But the plea is, Reb Chaim said, look what the Medrash teaches us. When two people want to be mavata, no one's going to lose. The person will find an eitzah. I guess the same eyes, the same hearts that saw in the Gemara Hoirius, that when someone's mavata, the Baruch makes nisim v'neflois for him. 22 years there wasn't a chayil in the house. The same eyes and the same heart was able to see in a medrash or see in such a beautiful story that the Baruch bleibt nicht schuldig. It's going to be balance zero. Don't worry. It's going to be arichas yamim. That's chayecha koidman. They were fighting for chayecha koidman. It's like the Mama Rachel. You can't lose by doing the right thing. And the right thing is so much more choshev when it's the right thing that's mavata. And it's rather challenging. But the problem is, as you get older in life, you always have these issues in every stage of life. Person makes a simcha. So he's not alone. He has a mechutin with his own minhagim. What do? And this is not money. This is a tachlis. This is a minhagim. But a yid's biggest minig is to be a mavata. Rabbi Rakov Zev once asked what his minig was when he go to the chuppah, 2 fathers, 2 mothers, or the father, mother. So he did 3 I did like this, and 3 like that. So the person says, "What's the minig is us? What kind of minig is that?" Because 3 mechutanim wanted like this, and 3 like this, like that. Now I want to add, I knew Rabbi Yankov Kamenetsky, I was able to know him. He was moiser nefesh minhagim. Malagit said, minig. I'll give you one dugma. He says that he never ate milchiks on Friday because his mother had that minig. He doesn't know why, but that was his minig. In fact, once he had to mamish al shalom bayis, he had to in his matanedem. It wasn't that he wasn't machshiv minhagim, but he was machshiv the minig of all minhagim. The bakke shalom v'rotfeyu. A caterer told me, you wouldn't believe how many chutanim don't talk because they don't agree about a side dish. If they fight about the main course, no, achrashti. I'm a photographer told me, I couldn't make this up. He says, people come to me, Mechtan come to me before the chasana, and then we talk about the chasana. I called them up to come to watch the videos. They say, no, we have to come separately. We're not talking anymore. It's not a joke. But how could it not be like that? People have their own ideas, and people want their own ideas, and why should I be mavata? But then you have the golden midah mavata. That's Pesach Kol HaSharim. That's the Pesach Tikva Nichbad Moed. A child is born. How many times do we hear the machlokes about a name, about a sandik? A young man that I know once met Rapam, came to see Rapam actually, I should say. He said, I have a problem tomorrow making a bris for my son, and it happens to be both grandfathers were nifta that year. And both living grandmothers insist that the name should be given after their husband. And each had a cheshm why they have it kedima. And none want to relent. They both are not coming to the bris unless they have their ratzon. So the young man says, what should I do? I can't have, they don't want to even mix names. Ram said, tell me the story. But the first one, he wanted a little information. And he decided grandmother A had kedima. He says, give me grandmother B's phone number. Okay. Now, he didn't know what happened. But they both came to the bris, and it worked out well. A while later, he met Rapam. Rapam said, how did it go? He goes, I had such problems. What do you mean? Because grandmother A, that was given the name, found out before the bris what the Rashiva told the other woman, and then she wanted to be Mavata. And they're fighting who's Mavata. Now, what did he say? He said, probably giving a name after an ifta is a schus. But is there a bigger schus than being mavata? And he spoke about the koyach of vitor. And this inspired grandmother B to pull out. Grandmother A found that and also wanted to be mavata. Why should I get a name? I want a better prize. That's a Yiddish attitude. And it's so pashit. Names for an ifta, or sandikayis, or sidikadushin, or kvat, or anything, the list goes on and on, is wonderful. But look at Mama Rachel. Look at Rav Papa and Rabbi Shua. Look at the Gemara in Genharius. Look at balance zero. Is there a bigger skula? Is there a bigger bracha? Dvarim pshutim, if we have it before it comes to Nisayan. Another simple marshal, davening for the Yomid, getting an aliyah on the yard site, is avodas chus. It's not a chus, it's a mitzvah deraisa, mechabdei b'moisai. But if there's only one shlishi on a Monday and Thursday, and there are 2 avelim, what are you supposed to do? There has to be a koyach avito. I saw this in Taka Michal Yehuda Seifa. There was a person who was nifta young, and they were thinking what to do as chus for the father, and punkt then Michal Yehuda walked in. So they have a plan, they want to do something the father. What should they do? He goes, I'll tell you the best thing, be makabel for the next year, 11 months, don't make any machlokes for the Yomid. You'll see, that's the biggest chus. From Pshutim, no? Ben Ish Chai writes, some people fight for the Yomid, they think that if they daven for the Yomid, they're machayim eis in their father. That doesn't happen. But you know what does happen? The way Svar Makdash would say, when someone's mavata of the Amid or the Aliyah or whatever it is, That's the crown that the neshama gets, because he left a child that has the chachma to know that ein adam shemeli u mafsid, that na reisi v'gam zeknati v'lo reisi mevata mafsid. Another mashal. I was like, they called him the Chavetz Chaim of Muncie, the Tzaddik of Muncie. He would talk both. And I'll tell you, if you've never heard of him, I'll tell you one story about him. I heard it from his mechutin that knew the story firsthand. They once found in his drawer, Chayav, found a bank book. Now, today bank books no longer used, but a bank book in those days, you invested money, you had a bank account, and you had, withdrawals and deposits, and there's a big deposit of money, and small withdrawals, but there's a lot of money, and they lived, they didn't have much money, him and his Rebbetzin. So one of the children, they asked him, like, politely, well, what is this book money about? It's money we could use. What is it? He goes, no, just leave it. They said, what is it? I'll tell you the truth. He says, this is my Shalom account. He says, Lamaisa, we call a worker, for example, or we send a suit to the cleaners. He gave a few examples, but not a gaya. And there's a sichsuch. I think he didn't do a good job. He thinks he did. Or we made up to paint the house with one coat, two coats, whatever the Shalom he gave. And Lamaisa, we didn't make a contract. It's not clear. So if I'm wrong, I give the money b'tshuas chein. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But let's say I'm right. Let's say Lamaisa, the painter was wrong. The cleaner didn't do a good job, whatever it is. But he still says, that's not fair. Don't push me around. And if I get my way, because I'll say, listen, I think it's only fair, he'll give it to me. But there'll be resentment. There'll be a period halev. Like, he pushed me into it. So it's really my right of way. I could ask for the money, and it's very fair. But it's not worth it to me that someone should be angry at me. There should be a sin. There should be a lack of achdus. But a mensch is not a mensch. God, he was more than a mensch, but a mensch is not a mensch. And it's hard for me to give money that I really is mine. So I was magdish money. It's called the Shalom account. I could only use this money in a situation that I'm right and I'm doing to keep Shalom, to go the extra mile. That's a tzaddik. That's someone that understands the koyach of vita is so great, it's going to make an investment. But it's such a big chiddush. How much do we even spend on a hiddur of an esrog? And how about a hiddur in Sholem, in Achdus? Rapam used to always say this. We spend so much on an esrog. How about spending money in a din Torah that we know we have the right of way, instead of going to a din Torah and making machlokes? Someone told me recently he lost $50,000 because he didn't want to go to a court. Because the Chol Hashem would come out, the Yidna fighting. His chelik of der Welt. What that did to him, the whole person. He had a therapy, he had training, he had treatment. He changed his personality. He gave up such big money. You think he's going to fight about an aliyah or a kibbud? He's willing to give everything up to Rabbi Shlam's bracha should be niskayim. And because bracha matzah klimachzik bracha el hashalom. But the embassy, I think, this hanhaga is a beferish Gemara, a machaba also. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin Davav and Machab and Chayshim Mishpat Simon Yud Beis Siv Beis passing like this: Kol Bezin Sha'asa Oisep Shora Tamid Hareza Meshubach. Zok the Machaba, make up Shora is very good. Now we think what that means is if they don't know what to do, they don't see direction, make up Shora. Zok Machaba no. Afal Pi Sheshama Divrayim. They already heard the whole proceedings. And Yodei Lehechen Adin Noita Mitzvah Leptzoya. It's a mitzvah to make a pshara even though you know in which direction the case is heading. So it's a big chiddush. What about din? What about mishpat? What about yikav adin asahar? And a chayshim mishpat question we have is, if Reuven is right, so what gives you the right to make Reuven and Shimon make a pshara if Reuven is 100% right? Zok tisma, sif cotton test. Ein bezem shemat lechaveroi ki noyach lechaveroi sheyevatem mal baldinoi. The Rebbe knows that he programmed us, he put it out with DNA. We're willing to let it cost. We're willing to give up money to make shalom. And even though I have right of way, but the Rebbe knows that a Yid deep down wants to be mavata. How often with neighbors, problems. I just heard a story with Shrekel, I don't want to say it. But it's because a person is fighting for the me. And then, like the Chavetz Chaim say, not the stam a little tzadikal, the Bar Shlam's tzadik, the Bar Shlam's chacham. Shoichad, the green dollar is blinding. A person doesn't see his negiyas. And he goes from bad to worse. And look at the golden words of the Ramban that should be ner l'ragleinu. The Ramban in Parashat Vaschanan, Vasisa Yoshev Atoiv. The Ramban has to tell first the pasuk says do all the mitzvahs, chukav, eidav, mishpatav, and then Vasisa Yoshev Atoiv, L'man Yitablach Uvasu Rosh Haaretz. What is that adding? Already it says do all the mitzvahs. Sagt der Ramban heilige Werte. Tein daitcha las atoiv hayoshev be'enei Hashem lefnim b'shuras hadin, sagt der Ramban, ki oyev hatoiv hayoshev. The Bar Shlam has a special ahava for Yashras. Yashras means not halacha. It's beyond halacha. It's the lefnim b'shuras hadin. And he gives a mashal of shchenim. Torah can't say how to deal with shchenim. But if you're going to be mavata, L'man yitavlach uvasa v'yirashta haaretz ki hu oyev es that yashus. Sometimes it's not easy, but it's the best investment we can make. You know, today we live in a world of therapy and exercise, and the more you do, they say no pain, no gain. But here you look at it differently. This is the gain of giving in. But maybe it's a little more than that. You know, there's an halach in Ramah, you can all look it up. It sounds like a medrash pliya, it probably is a medrash pliya, but it's halacha. The Ramah in the beginning of Reish Tzadik Vav says, Nehagen lishpoich mikoisha yayin ala oretz. The minhag is before Havdalah, you take the kais of wine and pour it on the ground. Why? Why isn't that bal tashchas? Good wine on the ground. Tama shvicha, sagt der Ramah, Damina im Sech der Erevin, kol bayish shalai nishpach bo yayin kamayim, ein by siman bracha. If you don't pour wine out, you'll never see bracha. So this is a skula that's recommended by the Ramah. But the plea is, what kind of school is that? How does it work? Why does it work? Why is Baal Tashchis overlooked? So the Taz has this kasha. Taz is also, what's the Gemara in Erevin? Where do you see Gemara Erevin? You pour wine on the floor. Zot the Taz, a dava nifla moed. We look forward to a good tevach, a good week. We look forward to hachalein hayam aboim lekrasenu l'shalom. But zok the Taz, it can't work. Because when people have sichsuchim, especially in Mominis, when the wife spends too much, there's a mashli gives, the husband gets angry. Why do you do this? We need it. We have to have it. Can there be shalom? Can there be simcha? Can there be a good tevach when people are unhappy because of money? Zok the Taz, the notion is kol bayish shalai nishbach bayayin kamayim. The dicta is not right. It should say kol bayish ein shayfchim. Doing it now. Why past tense? Zok the Taz, you're going to train yourself for the coming week. You're going to have a therapy. You're going to have an exercise. You're going to take money, wine, pour it on the ground, and say, it's only money. It's only blotter. It's only garnished. It's not worth it. You're practicing for the next few days. If the wife spends too much, or the Gabi forgets to give you an aliyah, or whatever happens, you have the refu before the makkah. So it's very meduik. Not the pouring of the wine, but when one of the children forgets to do something and you get a ticket, or your wife forgets to move the car and you get a ticket, or the bounce checks out the bounce, whatever it is, it's only money, it's only blood, it's only nothing. Chazal wanted us so much to train in the koyach avita because Chazal knew the truth. It's really not worth it. You know, the Rambam in the end of Hilchos Deis, he gives a very tall order. He first speaks about the nekama is deya ro ad ma'oid. That's tam. The Rambam doesn't say, it doesn't var verta. Ro ad ma'oid. But the mice we have a lav of the kama. And the kasha is, Til Sharm, who knew a person, he was Nesil Sharm. He says, nekama is mesuka midvash. And only a malach can be expected to laisika v'laisita. And here the Rambam saying, but it's a bad midah. But listen, he adds, El roi leila adam liyos maval midoisav al kol divrei ha'olam. Not just be mava al midoisav occasionally. Al kol divrei ha'olam. How could the Rambam ask us to be a malach on a permanent basis? Al kol divrei ha'olam? You know, to answer the next words of the Rambam, that ner l'ragleinu. Shakol eitzem malvinim divrei hevel v'havoi ve'enam kedai linkoim aleim. It's just not worth it. You get angry, chayim enam chayim. You get angry, you lose that special ahav of bari olam. Life is so precious. Life is so precious. I can't tell you enough words. The brach of adam b'yakar. Time is precious. Shalom bayis is precious. Shchenim are precious. Co-workers are precious. The gabbai and shul is precious. It's just not worth it. You're not a nar. Why are you making a narish investment? Why are you giving up everything for nothing? The answer to every question is ve'enam kedai linkam aleim. It's just not worth it. A person's not a nar. You know what the Mishnah says? Sinas abriyas maitziyin es ha'adam min ha'olam. And Beli Apan you say ha'adam min ha'olam etehei ha'yediyah. Isn't that true, Nebuch? Don't we see even in Heilige Moistis torn by Machlokes? So Chaim Shalev Sakin Shmuz once said, how could a Moisid, the Heilige Torah Moisid, be torn by Machlokes? It's the Beis Hashem. He said, but if there's Machlokes, so the Gemara says in Gittin, it's a Beis Shel Satan. It's not a Kasha Beis Shel Satan. But someone has knows it's Einam Kedai. It's Maitzin Esa Adam in Oilam. In every stage of life, it's the answer is to be a wise investor. Now, there's a famous word. I don't know if it's even an emes word, but the machlokes how to put up mezuzah, either like the Sfardim do, standing it erect, or laying down. So Sfardim can put it standing straight, erect, and Ashkenazim put it slanty. Why slanty? Manashach, either standing or laying. So the Welt says, you're walking into your home. You know what tatzlach is? Be mavata. Make up shar. Slanty. Yadunisht. Svadu Ashkenazi, but that's the emes. Einam kedai. A moment of shalom bayis. Nothing justifies a moment of shalom bayis. Chavis Chaim was once walking. This is printed in a very chashuv seif in Grodno. And it was a very narrow path, and he was going one way, and there was a young guy coming the other way. And Chavis Chaim moved to the side. So the guy was shocked. He goes, Rabbina, you're older than I am. He says, my way of living is I always step to the side for someone. And the guy, the Malach Ro Yana Amen, and I quote the Lashon, says, someone that lives like that is always going to be happy. I guess even a guy understands Isi Mavata Mafsid. And then the Chavetz Chaim Takis quoted, he once called his family together, and he said, this Lashon, Du'u banai ki kol yomai hayisi nizharti shel litchais l'shum adam. Adarabba, tamani hayisi this nitcha v'amavata v'im adam hoylech b'derech zu toivloi. They say this was the unofficial tzavah of the Heilige Chafetz Chaim. It's just einay kedai any other way. You know, I once was talking to a Balabas, we're talking about Goimel, in fact, he just flew and he went to mention Goimel. So he happened to mention, but you should know, traveling is not so safe, he said. And I take out, before I fly, every time I take out flight insurance. I said, what's that? Because you don't know. In this world, there's insurance for everything. You go and make a flight insurance, anything you want. If you pay, they'll give you insurance. So I started thinking, the world has a certain chachma. You want to fly, you want to have insurance. Is there insurance for Simchas HaChaim? The answer is yes. It's to live with three principles that you soid how you soy this. Ein adam shemeya li mafsid. Nar hayisi v'gam zqanti v'larisi mavata mafsid. And remember, einay kedai. Nothing justifies. Nothing is worth a machlokes, a sinner. And best investment is to keep shalom. And I'll leave you with a Gemara. The Gemara says in Chul Daf Peites, Ein ha'olam miskayim el b'shvil misha boilam es atzmai b'shas meriva. This world, this big olam hamaloyai, with all this neflois, only exists on someone that closes his mouth during a machlokes. Shenema toila eretz al blima. Rashi says soigepiv. Now that itself is amazing. That the whole world is because of a person's gevura. No. For that you have to have emunah. To be able to see when a person has a point of saying something, of doing something, and he holds himself back, that's kiyum ha'olam. But I'll tell you, what you could see with your own eyes is your world, your bedad mechaverei, your shalom bayis, your happiness. That is 100% totally in a koyach, a gevura of being in control. It's living einay kedai, l'reisi mevata mafsid, einad shemei liu mafsid. But a person's life, so much depends on this midah. The Baruch was to give us the seichel, from seichel zum leben, to realize that simcha and happiness and medam chaveroi and shalom bayis in our hands. It's the koyach of being that mevata. And if we'll be mavata, we'll be zoich. The Baruch will tell us, like told Mama Rachel, the shavu bonam legvulim b'mher v'meinu amen.
Okay. Gewaldig. Rabbi Smith, you changed us all. The Shem Big Shit, I would like to thank Rabbi Rakov Zev Smith Shlita for the gewaldige she gives every Sunday morning. Mordige Kiddush Hashem today. Huge oil and Baruch Hashem. Today she is Nidvus Yedena Rabbi Spry from AB Plumbing. The next she is right now. Charlotte and Shuvas Dal Chalke Shechanok through the Square Dine. In 2 minutes we're starting the shir. Rabbi say give the places to all the Eden come first. Whoever's any neighbor the English Torah is a gewaldige Kiddush Hashem. Please be mechazik be mishtatev in the source of English Torah all over the world. You're in Lakewood the Shin Rabbi Yitzchak Sorotskin the Rosh Yeshiva Shlita. You're in Williamsburg the Shin Rabbi Avram Shor. You're in Muncie there's going to be soon a shir by the Rosh Yeshiva Rabbi Gon Rebelli Be'avachfeigel, and now the Skvele Dain, and later in the afternoon the Kasha Rebbe is going to speak later, and it's Yisrael there's many shurim in 11-12 different places. Gewaldige Kvod Shamayim, thousands even being mishtatev. Please call English Torah, be mechazik us whatever you can. Here one of us, come to one of us, call him Tiskram Mitzvahs. Ebcham Kasha Mrat Geshbach Lazak Sal Fikir Hebram Temet Shnam Al Chavas Metzitche Yagdul Torah V'Yadi Kaddish.